He helped create the music that a whole bunch of people loved, but he was never the famous face everyone knew. While other band members got all the attention, he worked behind the scenes making the music sound amazing. From quiet recording studios to big concert stages, Benny Andersson watched one of the most famous pop bands ever get really popular, fall apart, and then come back again. But the story he's telling us now isn't about shiny outfits or dance parties. It's about being really tired, feeling sorry about things, broken relationships, and the scary quiet time after all the cheering stopped. After people guessed what happened for many years, Benny has finally talked, and what he says is sadder and more honest than anyone thought it would be. Making a world of amazing music. Before anyone ever danced to Dancing Queen or cried to The Winner Takes It All, Benny Andersson was already working hard to build what would become one of pop music's greatest bands ever. He was born on December 16, 1946, in a part of Stockholm called Vasan, and he grew up in a regular working family where music wasn't a job you could have but something families loved doing together. His dad worked as a civil engineer, and his grandpa taught himself how to play music, and they gave Benny an accordion when he was only 6 years old. That simple instrument opened up his love for making melodies and harmonies that would stay with him forever. Unlike other kids who wanted to be famous, Benny didn't care about being seen by lots of people. He just wanted to figure out how music really worked. From the fancy math-like music of Bach to the simple storytelling songs from Sweden, he taught himself to play piano just by listening and could copy songs after hearing them only once or twice. When he was 10 years old, he was already playing music for family parties and school shows. People knew him not for being flashy, but for really understanding how to make music feel right. In 1964, when Benny was just 18, he joined a Swedish rock band called the Heapstars, and people called them the Swedish Beatles. As soon as Benny joined, their music got way better almost right away. The band started getting #1 hits in Sweden with songs like Sunny Girl and Wedding, and Benny wrote those songs himself. These early wins showed that he could write songs people would remember, and he also got really good at arranging music in the studio and performing live. Everyone knew he was the smart music guy in the band, and he was also quietly learning about the business side of making music. Then something really important happened in 1966. Benny met Bern when they were both playing music at a friend's party. Bern was in a folk pop group called the Hoot Nanny Singers, and he loved the same things Benny loved about music: making harmonies, arranging songs, and paying attention to small details. When they played music together that night, they became instant music partners. Over the next few years, they started writing songs together, trying out different kinds of music, and even writing songs for other Swedish singers. They became really close friends, not just because they respected each other, but because they worked perfectly as a team. Benny was the one who felt the emotions in the music, and Bern was the smart guy who wrote the words. By the early 1970s, Benny and Bern weren't just writing songs together, they were also dating two other musicians, Agnia Feldskog, who was already a big solo singer in Sweden, and Annie Fred Frida Lingstad, who used to sing jazz but switched to pop and had a really strong, deep voice. All four of them decided to make music together under the really long name Bern and Benny, Agnetha, and Annie Frid. The name was weird and hard to say, but when they made music together it was magical. They tried to win the contest to represent Sweden in Eurovision in 1973 but didn't make it. They didn't give up though, and came back the next year with a song called Waterloo, a really catchy pop song that won the 1974 Eurovision Song Contest and made them famous all around the world. Right after that, they picked a name that was easier to remember, ABBA, which used the first letters of all their names. From that moment on, Benny wasn't just making pop music anymore. He was like an artist who builds with sound. He treated every song like he was painting a picture, adding different instruments in layers, making the singing voices blend together perfectly, and using synthesizers way before other musicians thought it was cool. When they were recording in the studio, everyone knew Benny would be patient and want everything to be perfect, sometimes working for days just to get one harmony to sound exactly right emotionally. He didn't care about what was popular at the time. He cared about making music that would be good forever. Even though Agnia and Frida amazed crowds wearing matching sparkly outfits, and Bern wrote clever, sad but sweet words, it was Benny who shaped the hidden emotional parts of ABBA's music. His special style mixed happy sounds with deep feelings, like Swedish sadness hidden inside pretty melodies. Songs like Knowing Me, Knowing You and Fernando had both things at once. They sounded joyful on top, but felt sad underneath. That was Benny's special talent, not just for pop music, but for millions of people who felt something deeper when they heard ABBA's songs that seemed simple but really weren't. The truth is, Benny Andersson wasn't just making songs. He was building a kingdom where every chord, every quiet moment, every single note was important. And even though the bright lights usually shined on the other band members, everyone could tell that ABBA's sound came from Benny's mind and heart. Everything falls apart while getting more famous. For most of the 1970s, ABBA was incredibly popular and successful. But while the band looked amazing to everyone watching, things were secretly getting worse and worse behind the scenes. The problems didn't happen all at once. They built up slowly, like a house that gets damaged by weather over time instead of being destroyed by a big fire. The first big problem started in 1979 when Byrne and Agnetha got divorced. It was really personal and painful, but the band tried to keep working together like professionals. At that time, they were making their album Super Trooper, and even though the songs still sounded polished and good, the recording sessions started to feel heavy and sad. 2 years later, Benny and Frida broke up too. Their relationship used to be described as passionate and like they completed each other, a real musical love story. They first met in 1969, way before ABBA existed, and they connected through music before they fell in love. Frida said in a 1975 interview that Benny understood her better than anyone else ever had. But understanding each other when making music didn't always work in their regular life together. Benny's need for everything to be perfect, which made him amazing in the recording studio, meant he didn't have much time or energy left for being emotionally close at home. Frida, who was expressive and showed her feelings easily, started to feel more and more alone. By 1981, Benny admitted that he had fallen in love with Mona Nerklet, a woman who worked in television that he met during a TV special. He told Frida the truth about his feelings, but it was too late to fix things. Their breakup was quiet and professional, but it created a big emotional wound that hurt how the whole band worked together. Their next and last studio album, The Visitors, came out that same year, and you could hear the emotional coldness that was setting in. Songs like When All Is Said and Done and Slipping Through My Fingers were full of pain that nobody talked about directly. The magic was going away, and even though the band kept going for one more year, something really important had already died, and we all felt the sadness even if we couldn't explain it. For more than 40 years, the story of how ABBA ended wasn't defined by big dramatic news stories, but by a really loud silence. Unlike most legendary bands that end with a goodbye tour, a breakup announcement to reporters, or some final emotional performance, ABBA just disappeared. Their last official single, Under Attack, came out in December 1982. It didn't become a hit like their earlier songs. There was no next album, no world tour, no final bow, just a slow fade away into years and years of people guessing and making up theories about what happened. When they left, it created an empty space, and that empty space got filled with endless questions. Why did they stop when they were still so successful? Did money problems break them up? Was it personal drama or fights about their music? 4 years, none of the band members gave a clear answer. When reporters asked them questions, their answers were always vague and unclear. They used the word break to describe what happened, and they rarely appeared in public, and when they did, they were careful and polite. In many ways, ABBA became like a legend frozen in time. The perfect pop group that just stopped existing without any explanation. That all changed in November 2024. Benny Andersson, who was always known for being quiet and thoughtful and staying away from personal publicity, sat down to talk with a newspaper called The Guardian. He didn't come with a practiced story. There was no publicist who wrote what he should say or any fake PR stuff. Instead, Benny did something unusual. He just told the truth simply. "We were exhausted," he said honestly. "Marriages were falling apart. The music was starting to sound fake. We needed to stop to save ourselves." That simple, honest statement hit people harder than any big scandal ever could have. In just a few words, Benny confirmed what many longtime fans had always suspected was true. The breakup hadn't happened because of betrayal or fights about their art. It had happened because they were emotionally empty. After years of performing, recording, and pretending to be happy while their personal lives were falling apart behind the scenes, the group was completely drained. Not in a dramatic way, quietly, but completely. Then, in April 2025, Benny did another interview with Billboard magazine, sharing even more deep thoughts. He talked about the band's last 2 years, 1981 and 1982, as feeling like boring workdays. What used to be exciting collaboration had turned into just doing the same thing over and over. He and Byrne were still writing songs, but without the same excitement or reason for doing it. The songs took longer to write. The studio sessions were shorter. Everything had started to feel like just a job, not something they loved doing. Even more important was how Benny explained the group's decision to stop. He didn't call it a failure. He didn't make it sound romantic or dramatic. He said it was something that had to happen eventually. It wasn't possible to keep going anymore. He said we couldn't keep pretending, not to each other, not to ourselves. This honest explanation wasn't just helpful for understanding what happened. It was healing. For decades, fans had noticed that ABBA's final albums like The Visitors felt different, more thoughtful, more sad. Songs like One of Us, Like an Angel Passing Through My Room, and The Day Before You Came didn't just sound sad. They really were sad. There was a heaviness in the words and music that showed something deeper than just following music trends. People who listened felt it, even if they couldn't put it into words. Benny's honest confession proved that feeling was right. The hurt, the sense of something breaking apart underneath the perfect-sounding surface, wasn't just people imagining things. It was real. What's really interesting is that none of Benny's honest words carried anger or resentment. He didn't blame Byrne, Agnetha, or Frida for what happened. Instead, he talked about the band ending like it was a natural conclusion, like a beautiful machine that had done everything it could do. We had done what we could do, he explained. There was nothing left in us to give it honestly. For fans, it was the closure they never knew they needed. The mystery wasn't mysterious anymore. The silence finally had a reason. And most importantly, the pain that people could hear in ABBA's final songs now had a name. Being exhausted, emotional breakdown, and the quiet need to walk away. Frida's journey through sadness and becoming a princess. After ABBA quietly ended, Frida went on a life journey that nobody really expected. In 1992, she married Prince Heinrich Rousseau-Royce of Plauen, which made her a member of European royalty. The Swedish newspapers got super excited. How could the same woman who used to rule dance floors now be living in a Swiss castle, going to fancy parties and formal dinners? But life as a real princess wasn't the fairy tale it looked like from the outside. Frida had a hard time with how strict and rule-filled aristocratic life was. The freedom and emotion that made her great as a performer didn't fit into the structured world of being royalty. And then the worst heartbreak of her whole life happened. In 1998, her daughter Annalisa L. died in a car accident in New York. She was only 30 years old. Losing her daughter was devastating. The woman who once sang to millions of people now wanted silence, overwhelmed with grief in her private home near Lake Geneva. The glamour of being a princess, the fame from her past, none of it mattered compared to the emptiness left by her daughter being gone. And yet it was Benny who came back into her life during that terrible time. Despite everything that had happened between them, he reached out to her. They shared a past that no one else could really understand. And in their quiet reconnection, there was comfort. Not in trying to relive the good old days, but in the understanding that only two people who had seen everything fall apart could truly share with each other. Frida, who once needed the spotlight to feel important, had now found peace in simply being remembered, not by the whole world, but by someone who had known her before it all happened. Coming back without feeling sorry about the past in 2018, after being apart for decades, something amazing happened that nobody thought was possible. ABBA got back together to record 2 new songs. The announcement shocked the music world. Not just because it ended 36 years of silence, but because it started one of the most incredible projects in music history, ABBA Voyage. By 2021, Benny and Byrne had written a whole new studio album with the same name, and Benny had taken complete control of making it sound perfect. But more than just the music, it was the way they performed that changed everything. ABBA Voyage wasn't a regular concert. It was a digital experience. Using motion capture and computer avatar technology, Benny and the team recreated what the band looked like in 1979, performing live with a 10-piece band at a specially built arena in London. The show was incredibly successful. Since it opened in May 2022, it has sold more than 1.3 million tickets, bringing in fans from more than 140 countries. The digital avatars didn't just copy the real people, they were better than anyone expected. Benny, always wanting everything to be perfect, watched over even the tiniest sound details, making sure the performance felt real emotionally correct, and technically perfect. And maybe most surprisingly, the band said no to a $1 billion offer for a live tour. They didn't want to chase the old excitement. Instead, they redefined performing on their own terms. The avatars, just like Benny himself, didn't need to be seen to be felt. The music spoke for them like it always had, letting the music tell the truth. Now at 78 years old, Benny Andersson doesn't hide behind perfect harmonies or studio walls anymore. In recent interviews, he's been quietly talking about decades of keeping his emotions locked up. He's admitted that music was his way of escaping. He didn't know how to talk about pain, so he wrote it into songs instead. He once said, "I gave my best words to songs, not to the people who needed to hear them from me." That sentence, so simple and honest, makes us think differently about everything we thought we knew. Benny wasn't cold or mean. He was scared. Scared to face the emotions that swirled underneath every love song, every breakup song, every hit that hit heartache. And that fear, that silence is what finally destroyed the band from the inside. Not drama, not betrayal, just being fragile. The kind of human softness that being famous never prepared them to handle. But there's something beautiful about his honesty. Because by finally saying these things out loud, Benny is doing what ABBA never did, giving closure. He's telling us that it was never about being perfect. It was always about surviving. The music didn't save them from their pain. It was how they lived through it. And maybe that's why the songs are still popular today. They were never polished fantasies. They were real, messy, complicated pieces of four people trying to hold themselves together. And now, after all these years, the quiet man at the piano has finally let us in. How do you think ABBA's music might have sounded if they had faced their emotions directly instead of through their songs? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful musical stories.